Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation on this Presidential Monday. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about President Biden's surprise trip to Kyiv in Ukraine. We'll share with you what the president's intentions were and how this will impact the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We'll also talk about presidents, because it's President's Day. Is President Biden the most progressive president for Black America? There is a conversation that's happening. You heard it from my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, last week. We're going to delve in a little bit deeper today to get his take on where we are with this latest presidential administration. Also, we're going to be checking in with my brother Michael in Hotep. He's going to be talking to us a lot about other things that are happening. So, folks, we got a lot to discuss. Stay with us, join the conversation, and so much more. You're tuned into the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, let's jump right in. The big conversation, a big story that folks are talking about is President Biden's surprise trip to Ukraine. This is the first time the President Joe Biden has decided to make the move to Ukraine when, as a result of the war that was waged by Russia on Ukraine almost a year ago, folks. But he ended up making a surprise visit to Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. And he wanted to let President Zelensky there know that the United States is still standing strong with Ukraine. He wanted to let them know also that he is going to continue to provide some military assistance in this battle, and to mention and to announce that he is imposing more sanctions on Moscow. Folks, this is absolutely huge, as we have been talking on this platform and in other spaces here on Black Star Network, the implications of this war. But now the president is saying that, you know what, we're going to be here for Ukraine. Now, this is also a major historic moment. It has been considered to be unprecedented in modern history for American president to travel to an active war zone without a large U.S. military presence. He said that now President Biden, according to CNN, he said that his trip was to reaffirm the U.S. unwavering support for Kyiv as he declared Putin's war of conquest is failing. Let me check in with my brother now, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland. He's a lecturer with the African American Studies Department there at UMD. And we always have him here on the culture on Mondays. Folks, Dr. Jason Nichols, my brother, first and foremost, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, my brother. It's good to see you again.
You too, you too. Okay, so President Biden decided to just drop in on the country of Ukraine, right, on this President's Day. But he also decides to make history at the same time. First and foremost, how significant is it for an American president to travel to an active war zone without a lot of U.S. presence, military presence there? Why is that such a big deal, Doc?
I mean, I think that's huge. I think you stated it correctly. The fact that he is going somewhere where it's an active war zone, where, we try to keep our presidents very secure, and he's somebody who has stepped out in a way that, obviously they did their due diligence, and there hasn't been an attack on Kyiv in a while. But still, for a president to go somewhere where there could, potentially be bombs or other things going off without the protection of the United States military is big, and it shows a huge amount of support for the Ukrainian military and for the Ukrainian president, President Zelensky. So I think that, this is historic in so many incredible ways. We have not seen a president do this before. It shows that, number one, I think it shows a certain amount of guts from Biden too. It looks gutsy. I don't know if the American public is going to receive it that way, but
Yeah.
to me, when I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's kind of gutsy, because we've seen Kyiv, even though not recently, but we've seen Kyiv get shelled. You know what I mean? And yet here he is, showing that support and showing the Russians. I think it's a huge message, not only of support to the Ukrainians, but really a finger in the eye of Vladimir Putin and saying, I'm not afraid of you. You know what I mean? We're not afraid of you, to the point where we don't even need our military. We believe that the Ukrainians are handling you well enough that the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, is willing to go to Kyiv, without the support of the United States military, that he is willing to be in that place because he feels secure, because they have beaten you down that badly. And I think, those are big messages to send to the world, and particularly to Moscow.
Well, I mean, on the other side of that as well, in terms of safety and security, the idea of Moscow being behind the killing of a U.S. president, even though that U.S. president may be standing in the fields of his opposition, just doesn't bode well for Moscow's interest, right? If they have, they're not going to shell while President Biden is there. They're going to be very cautious about not allowing that to happen. But I think, to your point, it does speak volumes. It does speak guts. And I'm wondering if that is too comfortable. We're in a space where it's almost like a pseudo war of America versus a war between Ukraine and Russia. I think that's the great concern. And it depends on how it is played out in the media on this side of the waters, because some people may not even know. You know what I mean? Like, I woke up to it, it's like, wow, okay, he made a big move on that one, right? But maybe to the American people, it's like, oh, this is just another example of his, as he said, his unwavering support for Kyiv. And at this point, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. So first of all, the Russians are definitely trying to say that this war isn't really with the Ukrainians, that it's a proxy war for the United States. And they're not completely wrong about that. You know what I mean? Like, the United States obviously has put billions upon billions of dollars into the Ukrainian defense, into the Ukrainian military. And so the United States has an interest in seeing Ukraine win this war. Now, it's going to be a war of attrition. I think it's going to be, how long can Moscow keep this up? Obviously, they're conscripting people, plumbers and, students and whoever else to take up arms in order to win this war. But I think that the United States certainly has a very big interest in seeing, where's our money going? Like, we've been throwing a lot of money at Ukraine. How is it working? Are we just are they losing? And, then it's like, if they're losing, we just put $200 billion into a losing effort. Like, is that really what we should be doing when we have lots of concerns here in the United States? I think the Republicans would say, well, what about the border? What about all these other things that we could be spending money on? And instead, we're throwing it over there into Ukraine. And I think the president, again, is saying to everyone out there, our support has not changed, even though, Republicans are in charge of the House and they're wanting to investigate where the money from Ukraine, that's gone to Ukraine is going, and all that kind of stuff. We support the Ukrainian efforts, and we are going to punish Russia. And I think just as big as, or almost as big as, this visit has been the statements made by not only President Biden, but by Vice President Harris, saying that Russia has committed crimes against humanity. And
that's it, Doc.
Major statement,
huge. And we know, and then look, if you study geopolitical history, that statement is like when a police officer says, I felt like my life was in danger.
Right. That's a good way of describing it. Yeah.
If y'all don't know what I mean, just check it out. When a police officer said in that moment that I shot and killed somebody, I felt like my life was in danger, then that is carte blanche, like saying, hey, murder was justifiable.
Right.
Right. So when you start to say Russia has committed atrocities against humanity, or Russia has committed atrocities against civilians, now you're putting Russia in a space where the world has to intervene, right? The world has, for the quote unquote sake of humanity,
right.
This superpower needs to be stopped. And we got to take a quick pause, but on the other side, Brother Jason, I want us to look at that, because NATO chief put out some words. You talk about the statements from President Biden and Vice President Harris. The NATO chief said that Putin is not planning for peace. And as we enter into the end of this first year, going into the second year, he's planning for war.
Absolutely.
So now the talk is becoming even more heightened. And folks, I'm going to share with you what Russia had to say about this new level of heightened talk that they believe is escalating the conflict. And Dr. Jason, this ain't going to bode well, bro. This is not going to end well for anybody.
Right.
For no country. Russia, Ukraine, America, and other countries that are now signing on saying, yeah, it's a bold and gutsy move. And I think what President Biden is trying to do, he's trying to shut it down, but his presence may be bringing this situation up much more. So we'll have that conversation on the other side. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot to talk about as we continue the conversation about President Biden visiting Ukraine, and I want to hear from you. So join us. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about President Biden's surprise visit to Kyiv, Ukraine, where the president has shown that he is still in support of President Zelensky. There's a picture there of President Biden and President Zelensky. Here's the thing, folks. President Biden made an unprecedented historic move as being the first American president to visit an active war zone without U.S. military presence, without U.S. military personnel really there to secure the president. He's out there by himself, just not by himself, but, without having all these extra parameters, extra boundaries around him. So we've been talking about the implications of that and so much more with Dr. Jason Nichols, our contributor for today, as we talk about that. And I want to hear from you folks. Post your comments in the chat section as we have this discussion. So I want to get back to this, Brother Jason, about what the NATO chief said, because The president said the support is unwavering. That's the way it is right now. But then the NATO chief said that, Russian President Vladimir Putin is not stopping. He's actually not preparing for peace. He's preparing for even more war, more bloodshed, more conflict as we go into the second year of this battle. What does that look like in terms of, this level of assistance? You pointed out $200 billion. I mean, the numbers is staggering. How much we're pouring into Ukraine, and without even putting any boots on the ground. And I'm saying significant a number of boots on the ground. And we're spending as a country $200 billion on an effort that the American people, we still don't even really know why we're there for, why we're making this effort, why we're trying to defend Ukraine. That hasn't been clarified. But am I wrong on that?
No, I think so. I will say this. The United States military is the strongest military on the planet. We haven't been winning wars lately, but we are the strongest military on the planet. No one even comes close. Like not Russia, not China. The United States, our military capabilities are out of this world. We give a portion, I think we've given like 5% of our military capabilities to Ukraine, and estimates say that over 50% of Russian military capability has been destroyed by the Ukrainians because they've been getting help from the United States. And I think that's driven Vladimir Putin up a wall. So what you're seeing now and what you're going to see is there's going to be a major, this is what I predict, a major spring offensive by the Russian military. They conscripted all of those civilians into the Russian military, and they're training them now, and there's going to be a major spring offensive. I think President Biden was going there in support because it's going to get ugly. This is going to be it's been ugly already. Remember, we thought this was going to be 10 days, not 11 months. But it's going to get extremely bloody because the Ukrainians have tanks. They're getting tanks from Portugal now. They've gotten some from the United States of America. I think they've gotten some from France. Their capability is strong. And Russia, along with private mercenaries from the Wagner group, are all ready to fight on the Russian side of things. So this is going to get really bad. And Vladimir Putin's goals are, because he felt personally upset as a member of the KGB to watch the USSR fall. He wants to reunite the former Soviet Union. And he sees that more in a historic sense than, just like, hey, I want to get some more land, a few more resources. He sees this as his moment in history, like his Alexander the Great moment. And he's gonna fight this to the very, very, very end. And the scary part is, how desperate is he gonna get? You know what I mean? Obviously, they have nuclear capabilities. How desperate is he gonna get if they keep getting beaten down by the Ukrainians? And also, how long is the United States and NATO going to support Ukraine? And I think that's why this is going to be a war of attrition between these two groups.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg made the statement that he said that there is no sign that Russian President Vladimir Putin has changed his ambitions. He said, we see the opposite. He's not planning for peace. He's planning for more war. They are launching offensive operations already. He said whether this is the big spring offensive or whether it's just a kind of prelude to that, it's a bit hard to tell, but they are pouring in more and more troops and more weapons. Mm-hmm. He also said that Russia is trying to make up for poor equipment and logistics with more troops, as you mentioned, Doc, throwing just waves of people under the defensive line, according to the NATO Secretary General. He said, if you don't care so much about human lives, then you just throw in more and more. Mm-hmm. So Russia is willing to willing to put it all on the line. And the big question is, and even the Secretary General even made this point, they don't know when this thing will end.
Yeah. I think it's going to go on.
That's the problem, though. That's the problem, because now I mean, it's not even just not knowing the timeline. It's like, what is the path? Like, what is the end solution to this issue? So there isn't even any real conversation about a solution, a treaty, like there's nothing there. It's just like now it's just getting to be like a street fight. Just egos and pride and you know, you got a little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna bring my and that's not a good place for 3-4 countries to be in when you got millions of dollars and people's lives on the line. That's just not a good place to be.
I agree. I mean, Russia, you can think of it as, like you said, a street fight. I've seen a few, unfortunately, and a few, you know, and Russia just had its nose bloodied. So now it's taking off his shirt, you know what I mean? It's
right.
All that stuff you would see in street fights. I do want to clarify one thing from the culture crew that I actually saw. If I said this, I did not mean to say that. I don't think I said it, to be honest with you, but I don't think I said that the United States had the biggest military. I said it had the most powerful military. You know what I mean? And that I stand by that. The United States has the most military capability of anyone, like ×2. You know, even China, even Russia, all of those places, even India, Pakistan, all of that. Nobody compares to the United States. But there's more to winning wars than capability, to be honest, or manpower. And I think Russia is finding that out too. Russia has 5 times as much manpower, even before conscripting these people, even before all of that. They had 5 times as much military manpower as Ukraine.
Right.
You know, Ukraine, number one, they're fighting on their own home turf. America knows about that. We haven't won a war on someone else's home turf in a long time, you know, since World War II. You know, we lost in, you know, Korea. You could argue either way. We lost in Vietnam. We, you know, arguably lost in Afghanistan. You know, Iraq is a whole different thing, but we haven't decisively won a war since World War II. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I don't think Vladimir Putin is going to back down. I think Vladimir Putin, you know, it'll get to a point where Vladimir Putin will put on a helmet and, you know, and a vest himself. Like, I think he really sees this as like a historic moment. And I think he saw the falling of the old Soviet Union. I've read a couple of things about Vladimir Putin, and I think he saw the fall of the old Soviet Union as this embarrassing loss for the Russian.
I've read the same thing, bro.
People. He's a KGB guy.
Yeah.
He felt embarrassed by seeing, you know, all of those leaders make friendly with the United States that followed that, and Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. He felt insulted. And so once he gained power, we should have seen this coming 20 years ago. You remember, first it started with Chechnya. You know what I mean? They took Chechnya. Then they started taking a little territory here and there. And I think he really wants to unify the old Soviet Union. And he sees this as his place in Russian history. So therefore, there are going to be no treaties. There are going to be no, you know, people say, well, why doesn't America look for an off route? Number one, that should come from Zelensky and from the Ukrainians. They're the ones who should be in control of that, not the United States, or else that's an admission that it really is a war between the United States and Russia. And so I don't think the United States is going to make that mistake again. We did that in Afghanistan. We didn't include the Afghan government and the Afghan military when we were talking to the Taliban. I think that President Biden is saying that that's between President Zelensky, but he's showing support for Zelensky, and Zelensky's not going to give up. And I don't think Vladimir Putin's going to give up. I think this is going to be a very long, bloody war, and we're going to see how, you know, if the United States is in this for the long haul.
Absolutely. Let me get a couple of comments very quick before we take our next pause. Really quick. Heightened perspective, Montana properties. You checked in and said the military contractors are just that. Contractors make money on war. Facts. That's a good one. That's the way of it. And I'm so sorry, but that's true.
That's real talk. Yeah.
That's true. Janelle, my sister, you said if only we can get some real accountability from the military industrial complex to show some real return on our investment. That won't happen until stop Congress insider trading and dark money. Look, here's the thing: the real accountability. This is the accountability you're looking for, Janelle. They're gonna be like, we're taking your money and we're gonna use it for other purposes.
That's what they do.
I mean, nobody sanctioned the president and Congress to be like, all right, we're gonna take 45 billion, 200 billion. Nobody sanctioned that. We didn't have a conversation. It's like being in your parents' household. They didn't ask you. They just told you what they were going to do.
Right.
So we can call for that, but the United States has a history of doing that. Very quickly. So Janelle, I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying, but at the same time, it's unfortunate because so much money has been spent over this past year with this war that we're seeing this. Tiana, you checked in and you said, and that's the problem. Putin has nothing to lose. Nope, he doesn't nothing to lose. I mean, I get the sense, and as we wrap up this part of the conversation, bro, I get the sense that Putin is willing to don a sword. And I think to your point you just made about the embarrassment he felt after the falling of the Soviet Union years ago, I read stuff that said the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, this dude, this is how him and Trump are in alignment with one another. Pride and ego. Oh, they don't like to lose.
Can I make one last point?
Go ahead, bro.
Before we go to break. One of the things that people were upset about was that the annexation of Crimea, that Obama should have stepped up and done something then. But Obama didn't want another war, and that's understandable. I mean, he did some other things that, in terms of not Syria, I was going to say Libya, and he didn't want another war, particularly one that could involve Russia. So he just put sanctions on Russia. He didn't want to go in, and Biden was like, if you give him an inch, he's going to take he's going to take your whole leg. You know what I mean? Like you need to step up. And President Obama was like, nah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to step into this type of situation. But many people say that from the very beginning, he had been disrespecting Obama and that he took Crimea and that after that, the idea that he was going to take all of Ukraine was a foregone conclusion. He was going to do that. And now we are where we are.
Like you said, this was not just happened overnight. This was a war in the making for the past few years. And now it lands in the hands and lap of President Biden and his administration. So we are going to stay apprised as to what they're going to do. Folks, we got to take another pause when we come forward. Let's talk about, since it is President's Day, where we are in our presidential relationship with the rest of the country. We're talking about, is President Biden the best president for Black America? My brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, said some things last week. I was like, we got to continue the conversation. So we'll have that conversation up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. As we talk about President Biden making historic moves in Russia, can we talk about President Biden just making history for Black America? Is that a possibility? Yeah, well, here on President's Day, folks often get into these conversations about whether, when we look back on presidential administrations and their accomplishments and achievements. And I thought today would be a great day for us to continue the conversation that my dear brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, got everybody talking about, where last week he put it out there a little bit that he's now, folks, let me just put the caveat. He did not say he's pro-Biden, but he's saying it looks like the president might be shaping up to be one of the most progressive presidents in the country, especially for Black America. So I'm asking the question for you folks, my crew. Is President Biden the best president for Black America we've seen thus far? And I want to bring my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, back into the frame so that I don't get thrown all of those jabs from you.
I ain't never.
So let me just say this though: you didn't look. You're not crazy. You definitely a well-learned man. Because there has been some conversations. Really, there were conversations in the New York Times this morning. On the root.com and in the other places that said, to really do an assessment. Now, I saw like a list of best presidents, especially like the Root. They say best presidents for Black America. President Biden was on the list. President Obama, Jimmy Carter. They said Franklin Delano Roosevelt, oddly enough, right? Mm-hmm. Where they talked about his love or his support, quote unquote, for HBCUs at the time that he was here. So so there are some conversations. Of course, on the worst side of things, you had like a Trump, or you might even had like a Nixon, and then they said the worst president for Black people in this country was President Ronald Reagan, because it was during his administration that they ushered in the war on drugs campaign, which decimated Black communities from California to Maryland.
That's a fact.
So it was his war on drugs campaign, that whole thing, which every president after Ronald Reagan, he got that from Nixon. So we know that there was an effort by President Nixon. But every war after every president afterwards continued in some way, shape, or form, Brother Jason, that ongoing war that continued to decimate Black families, Black communities across this country. So when we look at President Biden, you said that, yeah, he came from being in one place where some folks said he was outright blatantly racist, to being this guy that is now able to talk about having the talk in a State of the Union, which really resonated with a lot of people. When the State of the Union happened last week, it resonated that the president was able to articulate that part of our culture. The New York Times, in their piece, they said that this guy, President Biden, is a man who always kept one thing in mind, which is the little guy. He, throughout his political career, coming from the humble beginnings of Scranton, Pennsylvania, that he was able to always promote the fact of the working class of the working class of this country. He never forgot that throughout his 50 plus years in Senate, now into the presidency. So what do we make of this, brother? Do we? I mean, and this might be one of them crazy conversations, like hypothetical, but do black people should give more grace and mercy to Biden just a tad bit, or not?
So let me just say, when I said what I said last week, I said he was the most progressive president of my lifetime.
Right, right. Okay, there we go. That's a good caveat. Gotcha.
I guess I lived for. I'm old, so I lived for like a year of Jimmy Carter, but other than that, it was like Reagan.
Right.
We already know. Bush. H.W. Bush.
Right.
Clinton, who passed the Biden crime bill. So let's not. I'm separating Biden as president.
He was a pseudo black president.
Right. But he did a lot of things that were not good for the black community. The 94 crime bill had some negative effects on the black community and some other things, but he could play the saxophone. So people seem to like sometimes forget about that. But again, like I said, that bill was scribed by none other than Senator Joe Biden.
Wow.
However, we have to remember this. The worst parts of that bill, namely 3 strikes. Joe Biden never wanted that in it. He called it wacko. That was Joe Biden's thing. He was like, he never wanted 3 strikes. That's on record, but he went along with it because Bill Clinton wanted it. That was Bill Clinton who put 3 strikes into that bill. But again, then we have to, we go to W, and then, of course, Obama. That's kind of difficult to say, and then Trump. I also wouldn't say Trump is one of the, is the worst president for black folks. I think Trump was bad for a lot of reasons. I don't think he was the worst per se. But again, I think Biden, when you look at some of what he's been able to accomplish, even if it's not directly aimed at black people, I think he has had some things. There are things in the Inflation Reduction Act that benefit black folks, like the Justice 40 initiative, which gives 40% of certain federal investments to black communities. He's done a couple of things that we have to give him a little bit of grace for. Now, is he an 82-year-old white guy? Yes. Have you met an 82-year-old white guy who hasn't said something racist? You know what I mean? Like, I honestly don't know any.
Wow.
I'm keeping it real. I believe Biden has done some things in this administration, particularly in the Inflation Reduction Act and a few other pieces of legislation. However, can we compare him to Abraham Lincoln or to who, by the way, has a mixed bag too? I
was about to say, Doc.
Yeah. Same thing with someone who in words was very racist. President Lyndon Baines Johnson, he said the N-word was very racist, but he still got those 2 key civil rights pieces of legislation passed.
Right.
So again, all these guys are a mixed bag. I'm so happy you brought that up, because I think that we need to have this conversation in a very specific context, which is, you're talking about progress. Like, each president should bring another step of progress, another step, right? Like I don't even know if it's even realistic for us to have a conversation about a president for Black America, quote unquote, right? Like, who's gonna knock out 5 out of the 10 things that are important to us, right? In their single term time period. I don't think so. I think you got to look at, okay,
let's see, like you said, with LBJ. Okay, significant pieces of legislation that opened the door. Mm-hmm. Now, he told Dr. King, you're going to have to make me move forward on race issues, right? Make me. You know, and if you can put the pressure on, I'll get it done. He got it done. We put the pressure on him. But it's like those type of steps. Like, we got to put this situation in the proper context. And the context is, I don't think, and this is unfortunate, but I don't think we're going to ever get a president that's going to be like, you know what, and to Black America, I got you.
Yeah. And there are roadblocks. So, you know.
And it's significant roadblocks.
Yeah, I mean, voting rights and police reform, we know that there is a 60 vote minimum to avoid the filibuster. So you're not going to get, everything. I mean, that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep fighting, keep trying to make it happen. Just like, I'm sure there's a lot of, they always are trying to get white women, but they're not going to get Roe codified because of that 60 vote filibuster that they, minimum that they have to break. So again, there are certain things that Black folks are not going to get. The Biden administration has faced roadblocks. They were supposed to get all that debt relief to those Black farmers, and then the white farmers sued. And then now they're, they haven't been able to get it done. There's so much, there's so many roadblocks. And sometimes those roadblocks can be good. They stop a lot of bad things from happening, but they also stop a lot of good things for Black people from happening. So
absolutely. We gotta take a quick pause. When we come forward, let me take some comments from our crew. And folks, stay with us. We got a lot to talk about as we continue the conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is Phoenix.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back. It is President's Day in America, and we're talking about presidents, those who have made an impact on the interest of Black America. We're asking the question, is President Biden the best president for Black America thus far? Big question, a lot of different variations on the answers, but we certainly want to hear from you. Post your comments in the chat as we discuss it with my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland. Let me go to the crew really quickly, and then we'll get some more thoughts on this. Kelly Franklin. Kelly, you checked in and said, look, I know President Biden has tried to do right by Black farmers. He made slow progress, but he's trying. Yeah. I mean, look, and I get it. Like, it's not all, politics is a compromise, right? It's a back and forth type of process. So, when we say that we want a president that's going to really speak up for Black America, look, I know that there are a lot of barriers to making some stuff happen. A lot of barriers. But, some people say, well, the fact that he carved out some money for Black farmers in that bill is a sign of progress versus, it's like you said, it's caught up in the legal space now in the courts, but it's still a sign of progress. And I think that we just need to kind of take the little bit of the progress. And it's unfortunate. It's very, very unfortunate because we yearn, Brother Jason, you know it and I know it. Black America yearns for all-out liberation. Black America is yearning for the United States government to recognize our humanity, our value, to see our worth, right? Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that as we have to go through this progress, we have to go through this part as a people where other people are afforded some level of rights and privileges right then and there. After a little bit of pressure, boom, they get certain bills, they get certain protections, all of that. But Black people, we got to take the breadcrumbing.
Right.
We have to. We're told it's going to take some time. Where everybody, where it seemed now, I'm not saying this is true, but perception is reality in some people's minds, where they start to say, well, how come other groups seem to get what they want in a very short period of time, and then Black folks, we're still like, but it's going to take some time. So how do we reconcile those two things?
Well, I think one of the things that needs to happen is we need to certainly continue to fight. And, the fight evolves, but we've got to continue to put pressure, as you stated with LBJ. He was like, make me, put political pressure on me. If you want this, because LBJ had other priorities. He wanted to do the war on poverty. He was like, look, we did the Civil Rights Act. We don't need, you got the 15th Amendment. If you want this other Voting Rights Act, then you're going to have to put the pressure on me. And Dr. King found a way, Dr. King and others found a way to make that happen. We've got to do the same thing with any politician. We've got to make sure that we put political pressure on them. We, and it isn't necessarily that we're going to, vote for Republicans who, or anything like that. But we put it in there. I bet you if there are enough pieces and think pieces and you're on the Black Star Network and we're being critical of this administration because they aren't prioritizing the things that we want done, you better believe they're going to be at the top of the list.
Hey, and look, hitting to that point, bro, even if he shows up on the Black Star Network, even if he's in these Black conversations, right, these Black spaces, I don't want us to fall asleep at the driver's seat, because it's like what we saw with Clinton on Arsenio. We take the cultural moment as the political moment. We take the cultural moment as the civil rights moment. And they are two different things. They have two different intentions. So yes, Mr. President, come on Black Star, talk to me, talk to Brother Roland, talk to whoever. Right. But at the end of the day, that doesn't absolve you from the responsibility of what we put you in the office to do. That's just a cultural moment. That's just your way of communicating to us that you recognize that, guess what? This is a significant voting bloc. They have been with me from the beginning. They have been with the Democratic Party. Therefore, I owe to them my presence to be in their space so I can hear, not tell them, so I can hear where they are. And then I can go back and tell my administration we need something to do. All right, so let me just share a couple more comments from the crew. Young Sikh, you checked in and said, who arrested the killers of Breonna Taylor? Who put more black female federal judges in history combined, plus a black female justice? Who gave an anti-lynching law? Who gave record money to HBCUs? I mean President Biden.
Yeah. Well, so let me correct one thing.
Go ahead.
Who arrested the killers of Breonna Taylor? That was the DOJ.
Right.
And I would say President Biden has been clear that the DOJ is separate from his administration. That's one of the things that I think is great about President Biden. He doesn't think that they do his bidding. So the fact that he's the DOJ is independent. That's something that I was there in Atlanta at that debate where he was like, the DOJ should be separate. This is why the DOJ is investigating Hunter Biden right now. He's not shutting it down. We know what the former guy would have done, if you investigated his son or his friends or whomever. But President Biden, to his credit, has said, look, we need to be separate. The DOJ and the president and the administration need to be separate. So I would say that was Merrick Garland and the DOJ, and give them their credit for that. Everything else that the gentleman listed is absolutely correct. And the judges are incredibly important. People need to recognize how important federal judges are. and certainly the Supreme Court, even though there is a supermajority for conservatives, those federal judges and very few cases actually make it to the Supreme Court.
Right.
So those federal judges are incredibly important, and President Biden, number one, has confirmed more than any than his two predecessors have, Trump and Obama. He's on pace to confirm more than any of them did, and he's confirmed more Black women, and that's a fact.
I think that as we wrap up this part of the discussion, bro, I think that in 30 seconds, is there a way for us to not get caught up in the fanfare of these decisions from President Biden or the fanfare of these, any type of political moves? And so we can stay on pace to keeping President Biden accountable. How do we make sure we do that?
I mean, I think what we should do is something that I like to think that I do. I'm often put in spaces where I have to defend President Biden because I do a lot of conservative media. But one of the things I think we can do, we can give him his props when he does something that benefits the United States and, certainly specifically our community. But we also need to be like, where's this? It's like if my son, he does good in English, I'll be like, great job in English. But if his math grade sucks, I'm going to be like, so what happened with math? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be like, well, you did good in English and just give him all these props and forget about the suffering math grade.
Yeah.
Like, what do you need? What do you need from us? But you need, to do your part, and we'll help you out in any way we can. That's the way we need to approach this. We can't let him look past our agenda. And President Biden knows as well as anybody, his reelection campaign and any future for the Democratic Party lies and rests in the lap of Black folks. So you need to help Black folks as best you can.
My man, Young Sikh, you said we cannot be sitting here waiting for Black Jesus to descend from the sky and run for president. Make demands, vote, strategize, apply pressure, and keep score. There it is. Why can't Jesus run for president? Because Jesus would not want this kingdom. It's like, I don't want that job. My brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, University of Maryland, lecturer for the African American Studies Department. It's always a pleasure, brother. Thank you so much for spending your Presidential Monday with us here on The Culture.
No doubt. Anytime, my brother. You know you're my brother. You need to get that me sometime. Come visit, man.
Yeah, how about that? Come home.
No doubt. No doubt.
Dr. Jason Nichols. All right, folks, that's what it is. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's have a different conversation. I got my brother Michael in Hotep, and we want to talk about HBCUs, how applications have actually gone up for HBCUs significantly, but how will this work out once students get there on campus? We're going to talk about that and so much more. Stay with us. That's happening in the next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be back.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Folks, before we jump into our next conversation, I'd invite you to check us out on Black Star Network, where you can get news and information like the ones that you're hearing today. You can get it 24 hours and 7 days a week. First and foremost, we are streaming live right now on Amazon News, so make sure that you check that out. If you have an Amazon Fire Stick TV, we would love for you to tune in. And if you have family and friends who also own Amazon Fire Stick TVs, we would love for you to let them know that Black Star Network is now streaming now. All you got to do is ask Alexa, and she will play Black Star Network. So big shout out to Amazon, and let's continue to grow this platform, this space called Black Star News. All right, folks, let's go into another part of the discussion today. As we are continuing to have these conversations. One of the big ones, of course, is about the state of the HBCU, historically Black colleges and universities. And now there have been a number of conversations about the state of HBCUs, and from facilities management to leadership. And now here's a little good news. HBCUs have reported that they are actually seeing a growth, a higher number of applicants coming through their doors. And this is huge, folks. This is a huge boost for HBCUs around the country as they're seeing this situation. Let me just share with you where we are with the HBCU situation in terms of these applications. And this is coming from where the Root had made this, had done this report. HBCU saw the applicants pool grow by upwards of 30% after 2020. Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia saw a 60% jump in applicants in 2020, according to an aggregated data from Date USA. Spelman College, also in Atlanta, received about 4,000 applications in 2014, but in 2021, the HBCU for women had 11,000 applicants. So we're seeing these numbers increase, and it's bringing a lot of attention to HBCUs. But the question is, once students get there, what should they expect? I'm going to bring my brother Michael in Hotep, who is the host of the African History Network podcast show. He's also a scholar and researcher, and you could also hear him on Roland Martin Unfiltered. But my brother Michael, thank you so much, brother, for joining us on this presidential Monday. And you're looking quite presidential yourself, sir.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Farajii. Yes,
hey, brother Michael, let's talk about this because HBCU's been taking some hits over these past few weeks. You know it. You've been talking about it. But this is a little bit of a bright news. The applications have actually gone up. But I'm wondering, you know, they're looking at from the 2020 standpoint, right? Which is fine because that's when George Floyd. I feel like, brother Michael, that's we might as well say post 2020 because that had become a milestone in a lot of ways. But I'm wondering, how do we celebrate this first and foremost? How do we get excited about the fact that you got more Black students and you got more students of various ethnicities and backgrounds who want to come to HBCUs here in America?
I think one way to do that is to find out from them why they wanted to go to HBCU. Is it because they've been elevated? The article from the Griot talked about how the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris graduated from Howard University is focusing more attention on HBCUs. But also, we have to understand that in 2021, under the Biden-Harris administration, HBCUs got a record amount of funding. They got $5.8 billion in funding, funding from the White House annual budget, funding from the American Rescue Plan, and other dollars as well. So they got $5.8 billion. That's the most they've ever gotten in a single year. That was under the Biden-Harris administration. For some reason, that does not get talked about a lot. And I would encourage people to read the fact sheet from at whitehouse.gov. And I'm going to post it here in the chat for people to check out, because proper documentation ends all conversation. The Biden-Harris administration's historic investments and support for historically Black colleges and universities. And they go through and break down where the $5.8 billion came from. 3.7 billion of that 5.8 came from the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that no Republicans in the House and the Senate voted for. So this is an example of how elections have consequences. And you scroll down, there's the information. I don't deal with debating with people. I deal with facts and evidence. You scroll down and it shows you the information. Scroll down. Yep. So, and you can zoom in, and it shows you the breakdown of where that $5.8 billion came from. Debt relief. The Department of Education discharged approximately $1.6 billion of debt from loans provided to HBCUs for capital improvements through the department's HBCU capital financing program. Then grant funding, $500 million in grant funding in July, August 2021. So a lot of this does not get covered in mainstream media. This is why the Black Star Media Network and your show is so important, Farajii.
No, I appreciate that, and again, I just wanted, for those who always want to do their own research, they can just go to whitehouse.gov to get this information. Correct?
Yeah, the official website of the White House, whitehouse.gov. Yeah, absolutely. Not only that, you can read this document right here, which is about 26 pages, and it shows how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are positively benefiting African Americans. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. It was last updated November 6, 2022. I've been watching it through all of its revising as more and more policies are passed and more and more policies are put into effect. So this is, the evidence is there. Unfortunately, a lot of our people don't read or don't know where to go to get the evidence.
Right. So let's talk about, the fact that when we talk about this HBCU, increase in application, like what will the experience be for a Black student, or even from a student that's from across the waters? I've seen, Arab students. I've seen, from whether they come from Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Israel. I've seen students, Africa. There are a lot of international students that flock to HBCUs as well. So let's talk about the experience there. I mean, do you feel like HBCUs are equipped and ready and have the capacity to handle this influx?
It depends upon the HBCU. Different schools have different funding, different levels of funding. It depends upon the school. Now, as far as the experience, I'm somebody that went to PWI. I graduated from Wayne State University here in Detroit. I have traveled to and have visited Howard University a few times. So in talking to people who went to HBCUs, who graduated from HBCUs, some of my frat brothers, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, or some of my sorors, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, etc., they get a sense of belonging, they get a sense of togetherness, they get a sense of understanding their history and culture, things of this nature. Now, these are the general sentiments that you will get from different people. Now, you do have HBCUs are not a panacea. Okay, they're not perfect by any means. You do have mismanagement of funds in HBCUs, approximately about 102, 103 historically Black colleges and universities. You do have issues when it comes to housing, and some of the colleges we just heard recently dealing with issues with mold and things like that. I don't want to extrapolate that over all 103 HBCUs, okay? But you're going to get a sense of tradition. history, a sense of pride when it comes to African Americans. And then also HBCUs generate up 50% or more when it comes to public African American public school teachers, scientists. For judges, it's about 80% of African American judges graduate from HBCUs, attorneys, doctors, things of this nature. So you're becoming part of a family of a deep, rich tradition in the African American community. Now, at the same time, alumni of HBCUs have to donate back to the school. You can't just show up to homecoming game, okay, and not contribute annually to your alma mater as well, because a lot of these schools, they have a problem when it comes to alumni funding. And then when they go to corporations, when they go to foundations, and they're trying to get additional funding for the school, one of the first things they ask is, okay, how much of your funding comes from your alumni? What percentage of your funding comes from alumni? And when it's extremely low, it causes them to ask, well, why should we, donate when your own people who graduated from your school don't donate? So,
right.
But this could be something very positive. I think this could be something very positive. It depends upon how we utilize it.
And I'm glad that you made that point, because I feel like when we do hear about the good things that are happening with HBCUs, it's very little, right?
Exactly.
There are a couple of things that I think that,
or it could be, or the stuff we could hear, it could be blatantly false and pushed out by BS media and BS black media. It could be blatantly false.
Very true. That is
Yes.
very true. So I think that speaks to where we are right now. Like, I still feel like, Brother Michael, that HBCUs, unfortunately, the narrative behind HBCUs is rooted in history and not rooted in a sense of empowerment. Like, and the reason I'm saying that is because, you have people who look at the HBCU institution and it says, yes, it needs to be supported, but it's like more of charity instead of out of necessity. If we're producing black teachers, black scientists, black engineers, right? If this is the place that is putting out black professionals at a high level, right? And who are coming into these industries, making waves in these industries, then this should be a priority, not an afterthought.
Well, HBCUs and HBCU funding has been there's been a difference, and some people have talked about this in the priority that it has with the Biden-Harris administration as opposed to the Obama administration, because Vice President Kamala Harris actually graduated from an HBCU, whereas President Barack Obama graduated from PWIs. So there's I think there is a greater sense of urgency, a greater focus on HBCUs under this administration, is largely to do with Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, I think when you talk about charity and things of this nature, I think that also we have to really value the legacy of HBCUs. It's just like Black History Month. A lot of our people still think that Black History Month was given to us by white people. No, that's Dr. Carter G. Woodson who created Negro History Week in 1926, coming out of an African-American organization called the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. We created that, okay? White people did not give us that. We did not ask permission from white people to have Negro History Week. Then in 1976, it gets expanded to a month, Black History Month. But we were already celebrating it for a month, like in Virginia or West Virginia. We were already celebrating it for a month. And it was never designed to be the only time of the year we study our history. It was a cultural celebration of our history and accomplishments and achievements that we contributed to this country, but also globally as well, especially on the continent of Africa. So just as we diminish Black History Month, which we created, we oftentimes do the same things with HBCUs. And there's a different history somewhere with HBCUs, having been financed by Europeans and, different things like that. But it's a deep, rich history that we really need to understand and cherish and build upon for the future.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to continue the conversation about HBCUs, their increase in applications, and so much more. Folks, I want you to join us in the discussion. Share your thoughts, post your comments in the chat. as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and of course, Black Star Network. And stay tuned as we're also streaming on Amazon News right now. Stay tuned as we continue a conversation with Brother Michael Imhotep and you. So stay tuned. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the increase in applications for historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and what does that mean, especially as students from America and from around the globe are looking to take their talents and take their yearning for learning to HBCUs. Are HBCUs ready? Do they have the capacity? And most importantly, are they going to be able to provide the experiences that students need and want? We've been talking about this with Brother Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network podcast show, who is also a researcher and scholar around history. And of course, we want to hear from you. Post your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Black Star Network, and of course, we're streaming now on Amazon News. Brother Michael, I wanted to kind of bring you back in because I wanted to get your take around this whole idea of funding. You know, we often have this conversation about funding, but the one big thing is making sure that the narrative around HBCUs is not a narrative of pity, not a narrative of charity, or a narrative where HBCUs don't have any power. And the reason I bring that up is because I said the root earlier, I meant to say the griot, so my mistake. Griot. A couple of things. One is that one of our culture crew members made the point, truth is power. My guy, he said, I appreciate that, Michael, for all of the people that say Kamala Harris and Joe Biden aren't doing anything for black people. Thank you for the facts. So
yeah, you're welcome.
That's definitely necessary. Misrespect 90 and truth is power. Thank you, bro. Misrespect 90 said, that's all facts, Michael. So many people don't realize Carter G. Woodson started this tradition of Black History Month. Absolutely.
Exactly. So, and just to that point, I've spoken at Black History Month celebrations where nobody mentioned Dr. Carter G. Woodson, or they did not mention the annual theme for Black History Month. This year's annual theme is Black Resistance. There's been an annual theme coming from ASALH, Association for the Study of African American Life and History, since 1928. And they have a write-up on it each year at ASALH's website to give you guidance on how to celebrate this cultural celebration.
Hey, and you know what? We use that here on the show.
Yes.
I mean, when we started this show, when we started Black History Month, that was the source of our information. Yes. All right, so here's the thing. In the Griot's piece, it said philanthropists such as Mackenzie Scott in 2020 donated over $550 million to almost 24 HBCUs nationwide, according to the Chronicle of Higher Education.
Right.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation recently invested $100 million into HBCUs per USA Today. HBCUs are also seeing increased support from major global companies such as Apple, which has invested $130 million and counting into its Racial Equity and Justice Initiative, adding 45 HBCUs with resources for computer science and creative expression per the report. So we're seeing money being spent in HBCUs, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So one is, how do we make sure that the narrative doesn't get out of like, oh, okay, we're just doing this for the blacks?
All right. Well, I think the way to do that is to show what the benefit is, what is the outcome, to talk about the scientists produced by HBCUs, the doctors, the lawyers, the judges, the engineers, the public school teachers, things of this nature. Talk about the professions. So this is the philanthropy is part of the input. You have government funding, then you have philanthropy. You also have it from African-American entertainers or celebrities. Serena Williams and Michael B. Jordan collaborated in 2021 on a contest to award $1 million to an HBCU student with an outstanding business plan. We know Kevin Hart has donated $600,000 in scholarships to 18 qualifying HBCU students, etc. So that's the input. Show what the output is, show the graduation rates, show the professions that they go into, and what you actually get from it. Okay. So it's important when you show the output and connect the output to the input. I think they'll start getting a lot more respect.
So there got to be a return on the investment.
Well, there is a return on an investment. The return on investment has to be highlighted.
Right.
The return on investment, just like you have articles talking about the philanthropy going to HBCUs, you have to have articles that highlight the output and the number of doctors and lawyers and engineers and scientists and how they're contributing to society as well that come from HBCUs. Show what the output is.
So like what we see in the business world where companies put out their annual report.
Mm-hmm.
Need to see that coming from the HBCU space, right? To put out its annual report. This is what we've done. This is the direction we're going into. This is where your money is how your money is being managed and handled. And I think that if we start to, and I mean, to me, those things are so important, Brother Michael, because it helps us to give a better context. Again, HBCUs are talking about it as a cultural space. It's talked about. I mean, it's something other than a place where you actually learn great skills. It becomes this other thing, and I don't know how to use the word to describe it. But even in our community, it's like, oh, I'm an HBCU, but
it has prestige. It has for a lot of us. It has prestige.
It's still something other than what I think is, which is that this is a serious institution, or these institutions are truly churning out Black excellence at a very high level.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things to highlight is that many African-American students will go to HBCUs, and it appears that more of them are choosing them as a first choice as opposed to a last result. Meaning they didn't go because nobody else would take them. No white institution would take them. So they go to the HBCU. For a lot of them, the HBCU is their first choice. Right. And that has to be talked about as well. So, I think they really have to do a whole marketing campaign to market HBCUs, why students today go, and talk about the output and show African Americans in their professions, thriving, leading in their professions, that are HBCU graduates also.
Absolutely. Let me just take a couple of comments from our crew, because folks are checking in to talk about this. Chris Begg, you said the wholesale waste, fraud, and loss of funding going to HBCUs need to be addressed before more funding is provided. What's your take on that, Brother Michael?
We don't put that same stipulation on white institutions. We don't say, oh, they should not get any more funding. We only do that to Black institutions. As if all the white institutions, none of them have fraud. None of them have mismanagement of dollars. No, they all have it also. Okay, now if we want to say, hey, they need to be held accountable for the mismanagement of dollars, I agree with that. But don't hold HBCUs to a higher standard to get less money than the white institutions get. Don't do that.
Because what's the consequences of that? I mean, and there are serious consequences. And I'm saying not even just among us, but once again, that the consequences I would see, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong in this thinking, the consequences I would see is that it once again treats HBCUs like children instead of established institutions of
and it gives white institutions a pass. It's just like, what was that? What white institution was that get caught with the cheating scandal? I think it was Duke. They got caught with the cheating scandal, and they were cheating. They were the wealthy white people's children were cheating on the tests to get into the school, or however it went. And the FBI had to investigate. That's how corrupt some white people are. The FBI had to get in and investigate the college scandal. You don't think there's mismanagement among white schools? See, we only say stuff like that about black schools. That's part of a self-hatred right there, just to be honest with you. He may not have meant it that way, but that's part of a self-hatred. No, hold them all to the same standard. Don't let white institutions off with all the corruption that they have, and then only put that, oh, they shouldn't get any more funding. They get less funding, and also from the state government. They'll get less funding in like in Florida. I mean, not Florida, Maryland. In Maryland, you've had HBCUs, if I remember correctly, you're there in Maryland, Farajii. They filed a lawsuit against the state. Yeah.
For years. That lawsuit
for years. Yeah. But see, we only say stuff like that about black institutions because that's how we subconsciously think about them. We've been taught that we're lesser than. No, hold them all to the same standard. Go after those white institutions because their endowment is much more. They got much more money than the African-American institutions.
Chris responded saying, look, I compare HBCUs to Ivy League standard. Ivy League do so well with their funds. They don't need government money and offer free education.
Yeah, they don't offer he said they don't need government money and offer free education. Well, look at how much they get in their endowments. Is because of the part of that has to do with the amount of money that the alumni give them. Part of that has to do with the amount of money that corporations give them.
Right.
So you have to look at the input, how much money that they're getting. Okay, they're getting exponentially more than HBCUs are getting. It's like if you look at there was one study that I saw, and it looked. I'm gonna see if I can pull this up. I don't know if we have a break coming up or not. But it was looking at the endowment of like Harvard University. It was looking at the endowment of Harvard University compared to the endowment of Howard University, or take your pick. Take your top HBCU. Okay, right. There's no comparison.
No comparison. I think the endowment for Harvard is in the billions. If I'm not
yeah, the university annual the annual operating expenses for Harvard is $5.4 billion, $670 million granted in financial aid and scholarship in 2022. The size of the Harvard University's endowment in 22 fiscal year, $50.9 billion. Now, this is off of Harvard's website. Okay. Once again, proper documentation ends all conversation. I just put the link there. Pull that up. $50.9 billion, $51 billion. Their endowment. You dealing with a whole nother league. We don't have HBCUs up in that type of league. You know,
hey, bro, Mike, that's like the Chitlin circuit versus mainstream.
That it truly is a different world. That's what you're dealing with. Dude, we can't conceive of stuff like that. Okay.
And I mean, look, and the crazy part is, I remember, I never forget when Dr. Carr was on the show months ago. We had him talking about Harvard, when Harvard had apologized, quote unquote, for their involvement with the transatlantic slave trade and how and how they gained as a result of that. And then Dr. Carr, he was the one that also brought it to the team. He said, look at their endowment. He said, look at just Harvard's endowment alone.
Exactly.
It was like 50 billion. And the fact that they're still raising money. They're still raising money. You can't spend that.
Right. They put together a fund for $100 million to address racial disparities and things like this. It's like, wait a second, how much money do you have? That's just a drop in the bucket, Harvard University. That's just $100 million sounds good, but hold on, that's just a drop in the bucket from the type of funding that you have.
Right. But see, here's the thing, we got to take another pause, but here's the other thing though. I want us to get beyond the money for HBCUs. Mm-hmm. I want us to have a conversation. Does the curriculum needs to be improved? Does the level of outreach in terms of making sure that there is a connectedness between community and students, does that need to be improved? There got to be other elements of the HBCU experience that we have to talk about, because I feel like it's just cultural, games, parades, and money. We're not talking about everything else. And we got to take a quick pause, but I want us to make sure that we look at that, because if those applications are coming in, then how do we make sure that those students who are attending these HBCUs get the best experience to be prepared for the uncertain future of America? We're going to have that conversation. Stay with us, folks. We still got a lot to talk about with Brother Michael Imhotep, and of course with you right here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the HBCUs, how a new report has shown that HBCU applications from students have actually gone up, in some cases from 30 to 60%. And we're talking about how HBCUs can really capitalize off of it, and how we can have some very, very different conversations about historically Black colleges and universities. Talking it over with my brother Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network podcast show. And of course, folks, I want to hear from you. Continue to post your comments as we have this discussion, crew, and we'll try to get to as many of your comments as possible. But Brother Michael, we talked about Harvard's endowment. Nearly, you broke down the numbers: 50.9 billion, roughly, about to say 51 billion with a B, $51 billion. This is just one Ivy League school called Harvard, not mentioning other Ivy schools. But here's the other part of it, that we have the conversation about the state of HBCUs only from two vantage points, which I often see. And this is among Black folks: money and talking about the cultural impact of HBCUs, the game day experience, the parades, and all of those things, the fraternities and sorority, which is all well and good. But I'm trying to make sure we can kind of shift the conversation a little bit more here, Brother Michael, making sure that when we talk about HBCUs, we're talking about the curriculum that is going to be empowering the next generation to be prepared for the uncertain future that this country is looking at right now, right? Like how do we make sure that we move the conversation into that space, bro?
Well, I think it's important to once again highlight the alumni and how they are leaders in their profession, how they're leaders in their fields as well. And also, African Americans really have to be educated on money and educated to the fact that money is not a bad thing, is how you utilize it. that can be either good or bad, because a lot of us were all over the place. You have some of us who are socialists. Yeah, some of us who are capitalists, things like that. And then the socialists, they may look at money as being bad. And, you know, John Hope Bryant of Project Hope, Operation Hope, he says, before you can distribute money like a socialist, you first have to collect money like a capitalist. Okay. So you a lot, and see, and socialism, that doesn't work for like large countries with a large population. That socialism only works for like small population countries. So a lot of this is just not really understanding money, finances, understanding business, etc. Very quickly here, I posted the link here. Hopefully somebody can pull it up. HBCU endowments, because they compare the top 10 HBCU endowments to the top 10 PWI endowments. And it says they're looking at 2021 numbers. HBCU endowments were for the top 10 were $100 million, but compared to PWI endowments, it was like between $55 billion and $69 billion.
Jeez.
Okay, and they go through because highlights. They look at Howard University. That's at the top. $795,000 was their endowment. Spelman $530,000. Harvard's is $51 billion. Okay, this you in a different world, man. Come on.
And there's Pee Wee League versus
That's Pee Wee League versus the majors, man. What are you talking about?
And see, that's what I'm saying, brother. Like at the end of the day, we acting like we really fighting over crumbs. We getting mad about little crumbs, man. You got people that own bakeries, quote unquote, for this analogy. You got bakeries that are being built in the likes of Harvard and Yale and some of these top Ivy League schools, and we're fighting over still trying to get the ingredients together, right? And this is why I'm saying that really we don't want to have, and I'm saying this country, we don't really want to have a pro-black centered curriculum and institution for higher learning. We don't really want this. And see, here's the great concern that I have, Brother Michael, that you have a company like Apple, you have a Mackenzie Scott, who I think done more probably for HBCUs than a lot of companies, because she just gave the money and just said, do whatever you want with it without any strings attached, right? The fact is, now we're now going to be challenged with companies in corporate America buying a school that teaches and trains Black youth on how to think, how to learn, and essentially how to engage in the world. So now we got to think about that as well. As much as we say we want more funding, okay, if you put this HBCU up on to be on a pedestal and look, hey guys, give it to us. Are we asking for our own demise because we want corporate America to buy an educational institution? And if they buy it, then what will be the product that comes from it?
Right. So I'm not necessarily saying a corporation should buy an HBCU.
No. I know you're not saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, you got these corporations, and I'm saying in the larger conversation, you know it and I know it, that people are like, well, if so-and-so invested in this person or this company or this group invested, but you know that each investment is a stake of the institution. Like, nobody's giving $100 million and be like, all right, cool, y'all do whatever.
They're looking for recruits. They're going to recruit from there as well. So African Americans, we're going to go work in corporate America. That's going to happen because 95% of Black-owned businesses only have one employee. That's the owner. 80% of African American owned businesses go out of business in the first 18 months. And a lot of that had to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. And by April 2020, 41% of Black-owned businesses had shut down. So what I think is important to understand, and why it's important to have a cultural foundation, historical and cultural foundation, where you can go into these white corporations and work and bring resources back home to your community. Okay. But not bring a white mindset back to your community. This is one of the mistakes that was made when African Americans went to white business schools and learned white business principles and brought them back to the African American community and tried to implement them. And they may work for you and your family, but they didn't work for our communities like the cooperative economic systems that we had, like the Colored Merchants Association in 1928, the Colored Farmers Union, the Free African Society, things like this, which where the members were also owners, and is based upon a concept of sharing and everybody gaining together, everybody working together. The cooperatives, these are principles we brought with us from Africa. Okay, if you
so I'm glad, hey, bro, Mike, real quick, I want to get, because now you touching on something I think is very important,
right?
Which is now that the HBCU, should it cater to our communal philosophy of from everything from business to health and wellness, or should it reflect the modern day American view of those things?
So as somebody that graduated from Wayne State University's business school, or PWI, I was taught white business principles. Okay, my degrees in business administration with a major in marketing. It was outside of that institution that I learned about cooperative economics from studying African history, African American history, things like this, and reading like Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard's book, Collective Courage, which documents our history of cooperative economics. So we're dealing with a dual reality. You're gonna go into those corporations, gain those resources, bring those resources back to your community, but also we need to embrace the co-ops much more so, because we have that was how we thrived. That was how we were able to survive economically, okay, and compete against white corporations, and even during segregation. This is how in the early 1900s, a lot of African American owned grocery stores were able to compete against the Woolworths and the Kresge's because of the Colored Merchants Association, which came out of the National Negro Business League, founded by Booker T. Washington. Okay, so we have a whole history of engaging in economics, but we don't understand it. We've just been taught white capitalism, and that benefits white people and white corporations, but doesn't benefit the African American community as much as the history of cooperative economics does.
Something for us to consider. We got to take a final pause. When we come forward, we'll continue and we'll get some final thoughts about this conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We just want to get some final remarks from our brother Michael and Hotep, and certainly from you, as we have the conversation about the increasing number of applications for HBCUs. Brother Michael, you made the point of the philosophies that are taught in PWIs, especially in spaces of business and in business, for example, versus than what the students may get. So, are you saying that HBCUs need to change their philosophy? Because if you go to a HBCU for business, whether it's business administration, business marketing, or anything relating to business, you're going to get a corporate America philosophy. But you're saying that at this point, maybe is it time for us to start switching that up? So to understand business in the communal understanding of how Black people do business. Am I understanding you correctly, brother? You on mute.
We're going to need both educations. How we did it historically, understanding that history of the co-ops in the late 1800s, early 1900s, understanding the mutual aid societies like the Free African Society, 1787, and then so we're going to have to be able to speak both languages, okay? But when you and one of the mistakes that's made when it comes to African American entrepreneurship is we think that we have to quit our day job to go start a business. Okay. And when I teach entrepreneurship, and I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years, I tell my students, don't quit your day job. And one of the things that you can do is you can partner with other people in a business. Because I worked for a company, African-American owned company, where they did this. You know, you had the 3 principal owners, they all had other jobs in their profession. And then they hire a manager, a general manager to manage the company. Okay. And then the 3 principal owners, they're not just dependent upon that one business to feed their family. Okay. They have other sources of income coming in. So they can work together, and one person doesn't have all that load, all that responsibility on them. So I think we have to change how we look at this. And in these business schools, we're going to have to learn both. Some of them already teach, entrepreneurship, things like this, but we're going to have to teach the history of the co-ops as well. And if you look at the Color Merchants Association, these were Black-owned grocery stores. So they are utilizing Black capitalism, but they're engaged in a cooperative, which is also operating based upon what people may call socialism. So within the cooperative, they have kind of like more a socialistic type of environment, but they also then engage in the overall capitalistic society as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the point that we're talking about having, and I think this is the benefit of having an HBCU. If HBCUs were to go down that road of offering those 2 different philosophies,
right,
man,
you got to understand both.
I don't want the HBCU to be Black only by name.
Right. Oh, exactly. They have to teach.
It's like a shell company. It's like a shell institution for a white company. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, and I think that's it has to push the boundaries a lot more, man. Like, yes, I get it. Because corporate America has done this actually with all schools, white school, PWIs and HBCUs. They invest in schools so they can get their labor force, so they can get the future.
Yeah, they want to train their labor force.
I got you. I understand. Yep. But for HBCUs, there has to be somewhat of a different mission. And that's my ongoing concern, Brother Michael, as we close out. My ongoing concern is we are often trying to align ourselves. HBCUs are trying to align themselves with corporate America or with the politics of this country. And it's like, bro, y'all are institutions of higher learning. There should be a level of independence and autonomy where Black folks or brown folks, white people, any student that comes to that institution will learn about Black history, Black struggle, Black liberation, Black understanding about everything from business to health and well-being to entertainment. Like, there has to be an ongoing Black philosophy that runs through all of those things.
Yeah, but also that is true. But also, those students want to go to an institution that has a good track record of placing you in jobs that have something to do with the degree that you just spent $60,000 to get. Okay, so that's the other part. So I agree with what you said, but then the reality is you want to be able to get a job, whether it's at an African-American owned company or a predominantly white company. Most likely it's going to be a predominantly white company based upon the way things are today. So that you can get a job, so you can start paying back those student loans. You can start making $50,000, $60,000 a year or more. Okay. And then at the same time, while you work in that 9-to-5 job, you can build your business also. So you're going to have a balance of both of them. You're going to have to have a balance of both of them.
That is absolutely true. Brother Michael, it's always a pleasure to connect with you on Mondays, folks. You can hear from Brother Michael and Hotep here on Mondays on The Culture. Brother Michael, you got your website. Talk to us really quickly.
Yeah, the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com this Saturday, February 25th, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time is our last free Black History Month lecture. So visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, and we'll have the updated information there. That's the one that I did on Sunday, and click on the link. You can watch that one if you missed it. And then also Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, which is my new 12-week online course that started up. The information is on the website as well. And if you we do the sessions live, all the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. So please support us.
There it is right there. Brother Michael and Hotep here on the Black Star Network. And of course,
yes,
here on The Culture and the Roland Martin Unfiltered. Brother Michael, thank you, sir, for being so good for the culture.
All right, Farajii. Thanks, brother. Peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank my other brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, for being a part of the conversation. And I want to thank my crew, King Keenan, Joel, and my control room. Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank you for tuning in. Folks, make sure you do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com. Support us financially. Support us by sharing the content. Download the app for free on all of your devices. And make sure you follow us on all social media at Black Star Network on IG and Twitter. We would love to connect and build with you and let folks know that digital Black media is here and we are here to stay. And your support matters everything to us. So go to blackstarnetwork.com. Also follow me on social media at Farajii on Twitter, at The Real Farajii on IG, because my account was hacked last year. So I'm building it back up and I would love to connect with you. So make sure you do that as well. We'd love to talk to you and share with you and continue to keep you posted on the things that we're doing on this side. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Have a great afternoon and a wonderful evening. Peace.